All right. The mystery of the Gospel of Thomas to be unraveled today at 4:30. So we are on shloka or verse number 92. And we were talking last week, there's quite a few of these verses or shlokas that contain elements that are included in the other gospels, but some of them have some very different, a different word or two in them that makes them quite a bit deeper than what occurs in some of the other gospels. And there's actually some idea out there that this gospel was actually one of the first that actually was written, and that they're not sure that these are coming from other gospels or that maybe the other gospel writers were reminded of those stories from Thomas's work. And we talked about last week that this one is written in such a completely different way than the other gospels are written, uh, that when you tie it into the tradition in India, that Thomas, the Apostle Thomas, actually in his wandering about the world teaching about the Christ, that he made his way down into India, down around Kerala, and that there's actually a church down there that claims their root, that Thomas was the one that started them and started their community. And when you take that little piece of information into account and you look at how this gospel was written, how it's written in that wisdom literature way of many of the Vedic teachings, in that shloka idea, where they take as few words as possible to put as much meaning in them as possible, so that they can be easily repeated. When you read these truth sayings here as they're arranged, they really are just the little sayings of truth. I thought, well, there you go. Look at that. Thomas came down there to India, became aware of, the traditions down there. And when he wrote his gospel, he wrote them in the style of the Upanishads, the teachings down there, and the same kind of shloka idea that are numbered from 1 to, 279 or whatever they are in here. And and also used the name Yeshua. All right, so number 92 today says, Yeshua said, seek and ye shall find. It doesn't even say ye, and I put that in there. I'm such a good fundamentalist. Yeshua said, seek and you will find. Yet those things you asked me about before, and which I did not tell you, I am willing to reveal now, but you no longer ask. So that's an interesting detail. So the seek and you will find, that's been a promise, and that's in all the gospels, that little saying, especially I think it's in Matthew the first time. Seek and ye shall find. It's a promise to you. Don't get stressed out that you haven't figured it out yet. If you're seeking, you're going to find. It's a guarantee. And it's one of those things that I use to help develop that sense of forbearance, right? That this is, we're in this for the long haul. It may happen immediately. It'll happen anytime you're willing to let go of your favorite things. That's that's the trouble. That could be fast if you were willing to do it quickly, you could certainly do it, right? But it's also a matter of karma, because we're not the doer. We're riding a wheel. What are those unicycles? We're riding a unicycle, and the wheel of our unicycle is the wheel of samsara, right? And so we really can only go where our wheel rolls, where our mind rolls, and right. So we can't get worked up because we're not in charge of how the journey goes. We have a little bit of a throttle, we have a little bit of a gas pedal, right? Not in the form of doership, but in the form of quality, in the form of sincerity and earnestness. The more sincere and earnest you are, the quicker your travels will be, right? I have been trying, let me show you. Please don't think ill of me, but I've got a great example of this because I'm experiencing it full on. At the retreat that we had in Colorado, we did every hour on the hour, we meditated for 10 minutes. And I had such an amazing experience doing that during that retreat. I thought, well, I'm going to run my life like that when I get back because and as a monk, I can do that. I can meditate every hour on the hour, right? And so I thought, well, when I get back, I'm gonna do that. Okay. Well, today I still haven't done it. Right. Yesterday I did a couple of them because it occurred to me, but I was sick, and the 2 days before that I was sick, and then there was Durga Puja before that, and then, I had just gotten back before that and had to get ready for some guests and preparation. And I sat there and I remembered, that Ramakrishna, Swami Prabhupada and I remember that story since I've told them all already, where he and I were sitting in that devotee's library, and they had wall to floor to ceiling books on all four walls in this library. And I was marveling at the number of books. And I remember turning to Swamiji. He was sitting next to me as we were waiting for this man to come down to greet us. I said, Maharaj, look at how many books he has in here. And he looked around and smiled, and he said something to me that took my socks off, actually. He said, yes, but he will only be able to read the ones that his karma allows. And I thought, whoa, what an idea. So you can own all the books in the world, but if it's not your karma to read them, you won't be able to read them. And that explains a lot because I've had those things happen. I've had books that were very interesting, and I bought them and I brought them home. And for the next 20 years, had my intention of sitting down and reading them and never got around to it. And so, I made this declaration, oh, I'm going to start doing this every hour on the hour. And I'm like, wow, I've got a lot of karma that I have to defeat here in order to make that happen in my life. There's a resistance in me. There's something in me that's resisting that practice. And I'm like, wow. So just like the books, it is also with our practices. We can have all the intentions in the world, but we'll only be able to carry out those ones that are according to our karma, right? And so this is why we practice. And so this is not a race. This is why I'm emphasizing in the last few classes, last few months actually, that when you sit, you're not the doer. And so stop seeing your practice as a doership, and stop thinking that there's something to be achieved, that there's something to be attained, because there isn't. Your realization exists already within you. Your work is to accept it. Your work is to open to it, to trust that unconditioned love enough to receive the gift of unconditioned love. Because Mother loves you at this moment, or your ideal loves you at this moment with an unconditioned love that would put you in ecstasy were you able to open up and trust the unconditioned nature of that love. And so our work at this point is that to sit and enjoy the presence which already exists within us, and to accept the grace which gives us the freedom that is already within us. And so our work at this point is acceptance. And so don't get this idea that you're on a treadmill trying to get somewhere. You're trying to accept where you have always been, right? And so it's a surrender and an opening to God. It's not a quest. It's not a journey. it's, it's none of those things. It's isness. It's the nature of the moment that you already have. This moment will never end. So it will not be any different the day that you realize God than it is today, right? It's not more stuff that you need. It's trust and the acceptance of what you already have, what you already know about the divine. That will be enough. If you can learn to understand what it means to be loved by the divine unconditionally, that alone will take you to samadhi, right? You don't need a book to tell you about it. You need to understand it. You need to accept that it's possible, that it's true. So seek, and you will find. Yet those things you asked me about before, and which I did not tell you, I am willing to reveal now, but you no longer ask. Right? And I think the no longer ask is his point. It's not, we read that and think, oh, what did they want to know that he didn't tell? Oh, there's a secret Jesus. Oh, let's go find the secret message of Jesus and write another book about it. Right? That's not the point. What he's saying here is that you weren't sincere in your asking if you're not asking anymore. What was it that's changed? Because I didn't give you those answers. Right? And so it means be serious. And I can tell you that when I say serious, what I'm really saying is sincere. Be sincere. Don't ask questions for the sake of having a question to ask. And never everybody says, "Oh, that's obvious." Well, it's not so obvious. I've been to a lot of retreats. I've been to a lot of Q&A sessions. And I can tell you sometimes it's even the same people that ask the same question at every retreat. And you're like, hmm, didn't you ask that for the last 12 years in a row? Where's your sincerity? Right? Where's your sincerity? Why are you asking a question? If it's been answered for you 12 times and you still haven't accepted the answer, right? So, see, that's what our issue is. Our issue at this point is digestion. Our issue at this point is accepting what we know to be true instead of holding it off at arm's length until some whiz bang thing happens that convinces us, right? That's not how to do it. Faith is the root of all, Ramakrishna says, and that's what he means by faith. Study and understand what an unconditioned love is, and know that's what I mean when I told you that I loved you. That is what will bring you home. Do not give sacred things to dogs, for they may treat them as dung. Do not throw pearls to swine, for they may treat them as rubbish. Right? These truths that we have, that we know, these are beautiful, right? They're beautiful. And there's people out there that don't need to know about them. Right? This is one of the principles I have as a Swami. It's like, I will not answer questions unless I'm asked questions. I won't share teachings about Ramakrishna unless I'm asked about teachings from Ramakrishna. Right? The world has to ask. That's their part. And then we give, then we share. But there has to be because it's one. I don't go around deciding whether people are dogs or pigs, right? That's not my point. That's not my business, right? But if somebody is not doing their homework, then it means they're not interested. And if they're not interested, it shouldn't be continually provided, right? It's not good for them because they won't understand it or do anything with it anyway, and they'll begin to misunderstand it. Because if you stay in ego space and try and digest Vedanta from that space, you're going to get it wrong. It's not going to make sense for you, actually, at all. And, you know, so this sincerity, if you, that is there. This, what does Ramakrishna say? What are the three most important things? This sincerity and earnestness, right? So if you don't want to be a pig or a dog, be sincere and earnest in your you're wanting to learn. Second one, truth, right? Adhere to a truth, adhere to an inner integrity where your thoughts, your words, and your deeds are in alignment. So you're not thinking something different than you're saying, and you're not saying something different than you do, right? It's very important for us as spiritual people, as human beings who want to touch our divine nature. If we don't have that inner alignment, it will never happen, right? It will never happen. So we want those three qualities: sincerity, earnestness, truth, and the third one is love, right? Because love is actually our gem. That's our engagement ring. When we go around telling people that, oh, I follow Ramakrishna, See my ring? Right? That ring that we show people is love, right? They'll know that you're a spiritual seeker. They'll know that you're a spiritual person, not because you can quote a page of the Vedas in Sanskrit, but because you're loving, because you don't gossip, because they never hear you tearing someone down. They never hear you breaking someone down, right? They know you for having the qualities of love. You're always helpful. You're always hopeful. You're always trusting. You're always encouraging, building people up, right? Strengthening people. So this is how we will know. And if we're not going to have those qualities, then don't continue don't continue with pretense. Pretense is not a good substitute for sincerity. All right. So no, we don't go out and just give these things to everyone and anyone, and we don't offer answers without being asked, right? And when we're talking about other religions, we're talking about them with a respect and a desire to understand them more deeply. It's not ours to disprove or to compare or to see which is better or whatnot. Ours is to worship God, and that is what we'll do through anybody's religion, including our own. Yeshua said, "Whoever seeks will find. Whoever knocks from inside, it will be open to them." Now, can anybody tell me what the difference is in this one from the traditional statement? When he says that when this is recorded in other gospels, what does it say? Whoever seeks will find, whoever knocks from inside, it will be open to them. No one knows.
I can
Okay.
make a comment, Swami. In The Way of a Pilgrim, that book says, the grace of God distributes his gift and wisdom to every man severally according to his strength. So if they are not ready to receive, they're not going to get it.
Right.
The strength, you have to have the strength to receive that grace. You have to
Yes.
be ready for it. You have to be doing the practices, whatever
Hmm.
needs to be done. That book is really amazing. It's a very nice book.
Yes, you're
I
right.
liked it. Pilgrim Continues, The Way of a Pilgrim. It's in the beginning, it was very difficult to understand as English as a second language, but as I started reading and then I caught up with it so well.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. That is there.
Yeah.
So on this one, whoever seeks will find, and whoever knocks from inside, it will open to them. The other scriptures, when they say this one, they say, "Seek and ye shall find; knock and it shall be opened unto you." Right? But this one says, "Whoever seeks will find." Okay, that's the same. But whoever knocks from inside, a very interesting distinction right there, right? Because always we're thinking about knocking out there,
There.
knock, knock, knocking on heaven's
Yeah,
door.
from the heart. Yes,
Exactly,
it has
right?
to come from inwards.
That's the thing. And
Thank
so he's saying, but he who knocks from inside, right? Somebody who's not body mind, somebody who's not knocking out here looking, that person who's turned around, dive deep, oh mind, the person who has dived deep within themselves, they're knocking on the right door. And he says, it will open to them. Not that it will be opened, it itself will open, right? So very interesting distinctions, which means you don't need anybody to open that door for you. Your own quest, your own sincerity and earnestness will open that door. You do not need anyone's permission for that door to open. That door is yours, and it's there for you at any time. And so the question is not, when will I realize God? The question is, when will I allow myself to realize God? When will I allow myself to set down the things that I love, the distractions I enjoy, the the YouTube channels I want to subscribe to? when when will I set down the things that are blocking my view of God? That's it. Not when will I see him? You can see him now, right? You've never seen anything but him. When will you allow yourself to know that, to understand that? Right? Yeshua said, if you have money, do not lend it with interest, but give it to the one who will never pay you back. Right? This is karma yoga, actually. This is karma yoga in a Christian shloka, right? So basically, if you have money, do not lend it with interest, right? So don't look at what you can get from it, right? Don't look at money as a source of your desires or as the source of something that will be useful to you, right? Or something that will give you what you need. Don't see it that way because God is money. God can do anything he wants. He can give you 1,000 right now. You walk out the front door. If you wanted to, there could be a $500 bill on the front steps right now, right? And I couldn't have preached this with any conviction before Colorado, before my experience there, because I had never tested it. I don't even know that I really ever even thought about it. I always thought, well, you get money if you work for it, right? Well, that's exactly what he's saying here. Do not lend it with interest. Don't use it to get something with it. That's not karma yoga. Use it for its own thing, for its own sake. He said, but give it to the one who will never pay you back, right? Because that's like Ramakrishna. Remember, he was just sitting there throwing money in the river. Clay is money, money is clay. And he'd throw them both in. Then he would fill his hands again with money and clay. And he'd throw the clay in, clay is clay. And then he would throw the other hand, money is clay, right? To try and develop within himself this exact attitude. Not a disrespect for money. And he brought that clear because then he said, and then I got nervous because I didn't want Mother, uh, uh, is it Saraswati or who's the goddess of wealth?
Lakshmi.
Lakshmi, there it is. Okay. He didn't want to offend Mother Lakshmi, right? So he got nervous and stopped his practice there. And so we do it with respect. We understand, we don't just drop money, right? We don't just burn it or throw it in the trash. We understand there's a respect due to it. But when we give it, so many of us are consumed with, well, Swami Ramakrishna said he said I spit on that kind of generosity when he was talking when some Westerner that was in his group was like, well, what if they spend it on drinking? It's like, what if they do? What if they do? It's like that's not a reason not to give it, right? He actually tells them how to get around that because there is some valid concern that I've heard among some devotees where they're afraid to give money because they don't want the karma if the person misuses it. That only happens if you're giving money to the homeless person. You're not giving money to a homeless person. You're worshiping God in that holy person. And you're giving the money to that, which means you're giving the money to the God in that person. And you trust that. That's where you're giving the money. You're not giving it to the wino aspect of him. You're giving it to the God aspect of him. And in that, you leave it to the Lord. Their karma remains their own. You've done your worship and you continue on your way, right? Beautifully like that. Ramakrishna said, if you get calculating about whether this person deserves your money or whether they're going to misspend your money, it's like you're misspending your money. If you've got a house with more rooms than you can step in, you're misspending your money. If you've spent $100,000 on a car that a car for $10,000 could have done the same thing, you've misspent your money. So get off your high horse. Talk about the way the homeless person might misuse that money. It's, sweetheart, trust me. In this country, we're misusing our money in vast quantities constantly. Right? So if God's grace is big enough for us, it's big enough for the wino. Right? So don't get chintzy because you think that person's going to misspend your money or not be wise in the way they spend their money. Right? Worship God with that money. Give it to God through that person and trust the Lord to help them use it the way that they should. And the way they should may not look like the way they should to you, right? Because they might need one or two more drinks before they learn this isn't what I want. This isn't helping me, right? Yeshua said, "The kingdom of the Father is like the dough in which a woman has hidden some yeast. It becomes transformed into good bread. Those who have ears, let them hear." All right, so the kingdom of the Father, what is that? That kingdom is that inner reality, that inner truth. I don't know if it's a confusion on my part or if it's a truth that's coming together. I always see the kingdom of heaven and the Garden of Eden as being the same place, right? It's like it's that paradise where the divine, where God rules, not death. You know, we live in a world right now where death is the ruler, right? We live in the kingdom of Yama. we live in the waiting room that Nachiketas uh, went to, right? We're living in that waiting room, waiting on God, waiting on death, right? And we're asking our spiritual questions along the way, and we're getting our opportunity to learn them or to go spend our money elsewhere. That's not as Nachiketus was tempted by the god of death, so we also at this point are constantly being tempted. We ask our spiritual question, and he's like, "Oh, you sure you don't want to sleep until 8 tomorrow morning instead?" You know, and I'm the lightweight. I'm like, "Oh, okay." Right. Yeah, I'll sleep in tomorrow instead. That's no problem. Thanks. Appreciate it. I'll come back and ask later. Right. And that's spiritual life for us. The kingdom of the Father is like the dough in which a woman has hidden some yeast, right? Hidden some yeast. That's a weird way of saying it. I don't think that most chefs would consider themselves hiding yeast. But why is he talking that way? He's talking that way because there's an element, there's an ingredient within you that you are not aware of that in its time will expound, will cause you to expand infinitely, cause you to open the heart, open the mind, open up your wellness of love, your well of love for the world, right? It becomes transformed into good bread. Those who have ears to hear, let them hear, right? What does that mean? He says that quite a bit in the Gospels. Jesus always starts with, "He who has eyes to see, let him see," or "He who has ears to hear, let him hear," right? That means, are the eyes of your heart open, right? Or is it just the eyes of your senses? Who's looking? Is it your senses looking through themselves to find more pleasure, more enjoyment, more egoistic evidence of their own greatness, their own accomplishments, their own bigness? Or are they eyes of love that look out with the opportunity of service, that are looking out like Holy Mother scanned all of her relationships constantly? Who's sick? Who needs help? Who needs encouragement? Right? If you have the eyes of the heart opened, then you have the eyes to see. You'll be able to know. You'll receive those teachings, and that yeast will take root. The kingdom of God will expand within you, and that expansion will expand you to include the whole world, to engulf the whole world, right? I'm laughing because I feel like I'm physically doing that. Expanding to include the whole world. Yeshua said, "The kingdom of the Father is like a woman who carried a jar of flour. After she walked a long way, the handle of the jar broke, and the flour began to spill behind her along the road. Heedless, she noticed nothing. When she arrived, she set down the jar and found it empty." This is a lecture here on awareness, on presence, right? That's what this be here now is talking about. Be present. Be where you are. See it for the first time each time. Forget the past, forget the future. Be here and take the reins of your moment, right? Take the reins of your moment and keep your mind on the divine presence. because this flower that we're carrying along, it's our spiritual life. It's the well of spiritual knowledge, of spiritual energy, spiritual being that's within ourself. And we walk along being distracted by the world, right? We always forget the unchanging aspect of ourself, and we indulge entirely on the constant change outside. There's two ways to walk down Union Street in San Francisco, and I made a very particular practice of this. You can walk down Union Street, and it's always filled with beautiful, wealthy people spending money, lovely families, very stylish people, very well dressed. You can walk down that street just goo-gawing, right? Oh, every storefront, all the special boutiques, all the clothing, all the this, that, and the other. And by the time the day's over, you're exhausted, but you haven't done anything but walk the street, once. But because your attention was pulled out and placed everywhere, uh, you lost all of your energy. And what did you accomplish with it? Nothing. Your jar is empty, right? But if you walk down that same street and you stay aware of yourself as watcher, you stay aware of that within you that is observing everything else, and you keep your energy there, you will find at the end the same amount of time will pass and you've expended no energy. You're not exhausted. You're not worn out. You don't need to go get a cup of coffee in a quiet room, right? Because you are your own quiet room. You are your own focus, your own stillness. And so if you can live life not being pulled out through the senses into it, it will not exhaust you. And when you get to the end of life and you pull out your bottle of spiritual elixirs, it won't be empty. It will be full, right? It won't be empty. So live a life of attention, not a life of distraction. Always find the moment perfect, and then you won't be distracted by what you need to make it perfect. Yeshua said, "The kingdom of the Father is like a man who wanted to kill a man of power. First, he unsheathed his sword at home and thrust it into the wall to test his strength. Then he was able to kill the man of power." Okay, we probably should skip this verse. We don't need anybody going out to kill a man of power here. But what he's basically saying, if you're wanting to kill a powerful person, just running around and talking about it, running around and saying it, running around thinking about it, ain't going to kill anybody. You're not going to accomplish your task at all. You're just going to get all worked up and angry, and you're going to become the town fool, actually, right? He says, but the man who first he unsheaths his sword. Okay, so the first thing is he's got to act on it. If you have a strong desire for God, for freedom, for knowledge, act on it. First thing you got to do is take out your sword, right? Start your quest, however you think that quest needs to start, but do something, right? He says, wanted to kill it first, unsheath the sword at home and thrust it into the wall to test his strength. Am I strong enough to kill somebody with this sword? Am I able to carry through my task? And it's interesting because Jesus tells another parable. He says, suppose a man has an army, suppose a king has an army approaching his kingdom. He said, will that king not first send out a few horsemen to inquire, why are you guys marching on us as an army? Are you coming in peace, or are you coming to attack? You send it out to find out, right? And if they're coming to attack, then you start thinking, okay, can I win this battle? And if you can't win this battle, then what? Well, you figure out, how can I get the best deal in my losing this battle, in my surrender, right? And so in your as you are looking at I like to see it as looking at death. The army of death is coming. Can you win this battle? No. I can't. This body's going to drop. Okay. Well, what do you need to do to face the battle? Start doing some practice. Start putting out your knife and start poking the wall. Get your strength up. Start practicing. Start doing the things you need to do to face the end of the body, to face the end of the mind, right? And go forward. Don't piddle around with distractions, with stories, with bluster, with pretense. Don't go to the temple and still try and convince everyone you're the most spiritual person there. Don't go and give your food in the temple, making sure that everybody sees how beautiful that dish looked, right? And certainly don't go offer it at the temple and stand there waiting to see where they put it on the offering tray, right? It's like go and make your offering and then go and bow down to the one you just offered it to and thank them that it was acceptable, right? And go and meditate. It's out of your hands now, right? His disciples said to him, "Your brothers and your mother are waiting outside." He replied, "Those who do my Father's will are my mother's and my brother. It is they who will enter the kingdom of God." Right? So this is to a monastic really, but it's to all of us in the sense that everyone, like Mother says, make the world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. Right? And so we live in the world of no strangers. Right? And it should be this way. You can be a friend to everyone on the street. You can say hi in the same way that you say hi to a great friend, right? It's not difficult to do if you just shut off the dialogue in your mind and be who you are. You're going to be beautifully friendly to everyone and wonderfully sincere with everyone, and you'll have time for everyone, right? Only egos get annoyed. Only egos like and don't like, right? And so if somebody annoys you or you don't like somebody or you're offended by somebody, always remember, hey, only an ego can be offended, and only an ego can offend. Only an ego can be annoyed, and only an ego annoys. Right? And so keep those things in your mind and go outside without your ego. And then you'll be amazed at how friendly the world is, because people won't pick up your own standoffish energy that you've been putting out all these years. They won't pick up on your own self-protections that you've put against to guarding yourself all these years. They'll meet somebody they've never met the likes of before. Somebody who loved them without a reason. Somebody who sits and contemplates divine love. Those who do my Father's will, not just talk about it, not just learn it and study it, but those who do my Father's will are my brothers and my mother. Right? Those you want to be a companion of Thakur, do what he teaches you. There's a vast number of ways of doing it. Do it. It is they who will enter the kingdom of God. That's the point of why he tells you what to do and what not to do. He has no real concern with what you're up to and what you're not up to. He's doing it because he loves you. If you do this, you'll find your happiness. If you do this, you'll become that which you've always wanted to be. If you do this, anxiety drops out of your life, depression disappears, strength increases, hope increases, and love flows like a river. They showed, yeah, okay. I looked at the time and was trying to make sense of it. It's like, when does this over? All right. They showed Yeshua a gold coin and said to him, "Caesar's agents demand that we pay taxes." He answered to them, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's, and give to me what is mine." All right. That third one was added. That third one's not there in the other gospels. Give to me what is mine. Right? What would be his? You know, I think probably Peter would say, me, right? Because when Peter went around and said, "Come, follow me," right? Peter dropped his nets and followed him. Went to Luke, "Come and follow me." Luke dropped what he was doing, came and followed him. Each one of his disciples. So us as a disciple, us as a learner, as a student, we belong to Jesus. As a soul, we belong to God. As a body in a world of mercantilism, we belong to Caesar. All right? We have to pay our taxes. We have to obey the laws and the rules, right? That's God as Caesar. And then we have to obey the rules of love, right? And we have to do our practices and our spiritual studies. And that's in obedience to God, right? And then we need to be. And that's when we belong to our ideal. It's our ideal that is in us, right? It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And so that's when we belong. That's when the third one takes its place. When as a body mind, we are devoted to and surrendered to our highest ideal, so that it's Ramakrishna who lives through us, it's Buddha who lives through us, it's Rama who lives through us, or Jesus. All right. Yeshua said, "Whoever does not hate their father and mother as I do cannot become my disciple. And whoever does not love their father and mother as I do cannot become my disciple. For my mother made me to die, but my true mother gave me life." Right? This is always a tricky one because how do you deal with the word hate when somebody's talking about their mother? Well, remember, hate is relative, just like this worldly love is relative. So hating their mother and father, that's the worldly mother and father, right? In the end here, he gives you a little bit of a clue. He says, "For my mother made me to die," right? That's your earthly parents. They gave you life. Yes, you can be very grateful for that, but they also gave you death. You wouldn't have had death if they hadn't given you life, right? And so in that sense, yes, during that time in that place, you worship God through your parents. But your love is not for your parents. Your love is for God in your parents, right? And the limitations of family you run into. This teaching really is for the monastics. This idea of separating from family and renouncing first and rebuilding later. Right? So that's whoever does not hate their father and mother as I do, which means if they don't understand that mother and father are subjugated to God, God is more important than mom and dad. If your parents or your wife or your children stand in the way of you going toward God, even Ramakrishna said, like, remember, was it M saying, Ramakrishna was telling him, telling him that my wife said if I come here anymore, she's going to commit suicide. And Ramakrishna said, "What kind of wife is that? If you have a wife like that, let her." That's the same energy that's happening here. It's not that you need to hate your mother and father. That's not the point. This is said in a way that will break your reverie. He's like, look, if your wife is going to commit suicide because you're doing spiritual work, let her commit suicide. That's not the most important thing in that scenario. Your spiritual life is the one most important thing in that scenario. So stick with it. And stick with it and do what you can to let your wife deal with it and move through it without having to kill herself. But don't be manipulated by that, right? And whoever does not love their father and mother as I do, right? And how did Jesus love his mother? You know, he hung on the cross and saw her weeping. And he looks at his disciple John, whom he loved the most, and he says, "John, this is your mother." And he looks at his mother, he says, "Mother, this is your son." Right? And so in that place, he gave his mother, her son, through John, to take care of each other, the two of you. Take care of each other. in my absence. So he loved his mother to provide for her, to take care of her, to be concerned about her, but no longer to be defined by her, no longer to be controlled by her, right? And so for the monastic, it's very much the same way. You go with a great deal of love, but still with a very firm conviction. I will not always be your son, mother. I will die, and you will not always be my mother, because you will die. And so there's something beyond this that we have to figure out. There's something deeper than just our body relationship. There's something more, and that is the one most important thing for us to know, right? And so let us help each other. Let us not inhibit each other. Let us not distract each other as we go forward. Because your mother and your father belong to this world, and they are temporary. And by now, probably all of us have had legions of mothers and legions of fathers, legions of children and friends. And who's here now? All right. One more and we'll call it an afternoon here. 102. Yeshua said, "Wretched are the Pharisees. They are like the dog lying in the cow's manger. He cannot eat, and he will not let the cows eat." Oh, that's harsh. So these Pharisees, they were basically the religious leaders of the time in Judea or in Israel. He said, "Wretched are the Pharisees. Wretched are those the leaders of religion, right? Wretched are the abbots and the bishops and the priests, right? They're like a dog lying in the cow's manger. So the manger is where they put the hay, right, for the cows to eat. And a dog climbs up in that hay and makes itself at home there, lays on it. It can't eat the food, right? It's also so he's saying these spiritual leaders, they're not eating the food, they're not becoming spiritual, right? Necessarily. This is a very specific group he's talking about here, but in general, right? But they're also preventing everybody else from feeding, right? So you look at these scandals that are happening in some of these monasteries. It's like that's the dog laying in the manger. They're monks, they're doing it, but they've given in to their passions. And so they're preventing anybody else from finding the inspiration and finding the strength to take and to learn and to grow and to become. And they themselves are not eating the food that they're preventing the others from eating. So as a spiritual seeker, be careful. You are that manger if you are in charge of your ego, right? And you have a great deal of shade like a tree to share with the world just through being, not with any agenda, just through being. A great lover, a wise person, a steady person. You have enormous things to give. But if you've got all this spiritual truth in you and you're still more interested in that vacation or that nicer car or that bigger house or only certain types of good looking friends, then you're a dog in a manger. Your life is becoming an inhibition to somebody else's spiritual life. So don't let that happen. All right. We'll stop here for the day. And